Nobody heard it leave. That is the detail hiding in plain sight inside every report, every timeline, every breakdown of the night Lynette Hooker disappeared. The dinghy had an electric motor. A friend of the couple confirmed it to Fox News Digital on April 10th, 8-foot hard-bottom hull, electric motor, underpowered for the conditions. Every channel covering this case has mentioned that dinghy. Not one of them has stopped on those two words. Electric motor. Read that again. Electric motor. Because here is what that means on a dark, quiet anchorage in the Abacos. No ignition sound. No engine roar. No exhaust. A vessel that moves through water in near silence, capable of navigating to a precise coordinate in complete darkness, and returning, without a single person on that anchorage having any acoustic reason to look up. A viewer said it best, and thousands of people shared it because it was true. Technology does not lie. Only people do. Somebody knows more, a lot more. And the technology agrees. GPS data from Brian Hooker's own device shows it moving out on the water, stopping in the Sea of Abaco and returning to shore. Not drifting. Stopping. Deliberately. At a coordinate in 25 feet of water that Brian Hooker never once mentioned to investigators. Federal divers are going into that water right now. But before we follow them down, we need to ask the question nobody has asked yet. If the dinghy was electric, if it moved through that anchorage in silence, who else on that water would have known it was gone? Lynette Hooker did not stumble into this life. She chose it deliberately, documented every mile of it, and made strangers on the internet feel like they were sailing beside her. She ran. Not competitively, just consistently, the kind of person who laces up before the day has reasons to stop her. She sewed the bimini on Soulmate with her own hands. She bought healing oil for Brian's nail fungus and probably didn't make a big deal about it. Her daughter Carly told investigators she was the kind of person who made everyone around her feel like they had hit the lottery just by knowing her. She called the ocean her happy place. She and Brian had built a following around a life most people only imagine. Turquoise water, open horizons, a boat named Soulmate, two people who had left ordinary life behind and were documenting every beautiful and difficult day of what came next. In March of 2026, Lynette had a plane ticket out. A chance to step off the boat, step back, breathe. She didn't use it. 3 weeks later she was on an 8-foot dinghy in the dark with the man she had sailed beside for over a decade. She never came home. Before we go any further, let me do what this channel does every single time. Brian Hooker has not been charged with any crime. We state that clearly, we state it now, and we will state it again every time this investigation points in his direction. His Bahamian attorney, Terrell Butler, said on record, "My client maintains his innocence and he denied all allegations." After returning to the United States, Brian retained a second attorney, Crystal Marie Hauser of Grand Rapids, whose position, per ABC News, was that the public should treat Brian with the same consideration they would want if they found themselves in his position. When CBS News reached Hauser for comment on the latest developments in the case, she hung up the phone and did not answer any questions. We note that too, because this channel does not pick and choose which facts serve the narrative. We carry all of them. That is the legal frame. Here is the investigative one. The question this episode is built around is not what happened to Lynette Hooker. Every channel covering this case is asking that. The question this episode is asking is one nobody has stopped to name yet. If the dinghy had an electric motor, near silent, capable of navigating precise coordinates in complete darkness, how did Brian Hooker move across that anchorage and back without a single person hearing him leave? To answer that, we are going to cover 4 categories of evidence. The GPS data, what it recorded, where it sent federal divers, and why the movement pattern it shows is not consistent with a man who was drifting helplessly in the dark. The electric motor itself, what a named friend of the couple confirmed to Fox News Digital in April, and why that single detail changes the acoustic picture of that entire night. The 25-foot depth of the search area, what that means forensically, why aerial searches missed it, and what divers are going to find that planes never could. And the vessel systems aboard Soulmate, the Starlink terminal, the battery management logs, the cameras, all of them recording on a boat that Brian networked himself and believed he understood well enough to outsmart. We will restate the legal disclaimer at every accusatory beat. Every single time. Because that is what separates documentary journalism from speculation, and this channel will not blur that line. Now let's follow the GPS coordinates into the dark and find out exactly what that silent dinghy did on the night of April the 4th. Brian Hooker's account of the night of April the 4th is this. He and Lynette left the Abaco Inn at around 7:30 in the evening. They boarded their 8-foot hard-bottom dinghy to make the short trip back to Soulmate, anchored approximately 1,000 yards south in Abacos Bay. He says the seas were rough, 2 to 4 foot waves, winds building toward 20 knots. Somewhere in that short stretch of water, Lynette went overboard. She had the engine safety key on her when she fell. The lanyard disconnected the motor. The engine died. He could not reach her. The current and wind drove them apart. He drifted for 9 hours before washing up on the shore of Marsh Harbor at 4 in the morning. He was heartbroken. He tried. The ocean took her. That is his account, stated completely and without editorial. Now here is what the documented record shows, one piece at a time. The weather. Brian described rough seas and building winds. Per CNN and corroborated by witnesses, photographs and video footage taken at that exact location at that exact time, conditions that evening were calm. Flat water. Not 2 to 4 foot seas. Not 20-knot winds. Multiple independent sources placed the anchorage at glass conditions. That is not an interpretation. That is documented evidence contradicting a stated claim. The drift timeline. Brian says he drifted for 9 hours. Blaine Stevenson, a friend of both Brian and Lynette who conducted his own drift demonstration using the same wind speeds Brian described, calculated the distance Brian claimed to have covered should have taken approximately 5 hours, not 9. A 4-hour gap between the physics of the stated conditions and the timeline Brian gave investigators. The direction. Brian told Fire and Rescue that Lynette was swimming toward the boat. He told others she was swimming toward shore. He told boatyard security guard Edward Smith, per Fox News Digital, that she was swimming toward Hopetown with a yellow bag. Hopetown is north. The boat was south. Those are opposite directions. And Lynette's dry bag was green, not yellow. 3 versions. 3 contradictions. 1 witness, 1 bag, 1 direction, and none of them match. The time. Brian told most people the incident happened around 7:30 to 8 in the evening. He told Edward Smith it happened at 7 in the evening. At 7 p.m. in the Abacos in early April, it is still light outside. Not dark. Not the nighttime conditions he described to everyone else. The flares. Brian told Lynette's mother Darlene that he fired 2 flares. Physical evidence recovered from the dinghy showed only 1 had been discharged. A second flare remained loaded in the gun. And now the GPS per CBS News, confirmed by a United States official, the GPS data derived from one of Brian's devices showed the device moving out on the water, stopping in the Sea of Abaco and returning to shore. Per Fox News Digital, a United States official confirmed the dinghy allegedly visited the same area as that GPS data shows. Brian told investigators one account of where he traveled that night. His own device recorded another. That is not drift. A drifting vessel does not stop at a precise coordinate and return. Those are 2 distinct movement signatures, and investigators reading that data saw the difference immediately. Here is the summary. Brian Hooker gave investigators an account of a tragic accident in rough water on a dark night. The weather record contradicts the conditions. The drift mathematics contradict the timeline. His own statements contradict each other on direction, color, and time. The physical evidence contradicts the flare count. And his GPS data contradicts where he said he went. Every single element of the stated account has a documented contradiction attached to it. Brian Hooker has not been charged with any crime. His attorneys maintain his innocence. We restate that now and we will restate it again. These are the facts of the documented record, and we present them as exactly that. Let me slow down. Because what we are about to cover is the part no other video on this case has stopped to explain. And the language matters here. A friend of Brian and Lynette Hooker told Fox News Digital on April 10 that their dinghy had an electric motor. Not a gasoline outboard. Not a 2-stroke engine that you pull start and that announces itself across a quiet anchorage at night. An electric motor. Those are his words on record in a named publication. Quote, their 8-foot hard-bottom dinghy with that electric motor. Read that again. Electric motor. Now here is what that means, and I want you to understand the mechanics of it before we go any further. A gasoline outboard motor on an 8-foot dinghy in a quiet nighttime anchorage is not subtle. You hear it start. You hear it run. You hear it cut. Sound carries across flat water in the dark at distances that would surprise you. Any boat in that anchorage with an occupant awake at 7:30 in the evening would have a strong acoustic reason to look up when a gasoline engine fired nearby. An electric motor gives you none of that. No ignition event. No combustion noise. No exhaust. The propeller turns in near silence. The dinghy moves, and nobody on that anchorage has any acoustic reason to notice it is gone. Now layer the GPS data onto that. Per CBS News, confirmed by a United States official, the GPS data derived from one of Brian's electronic devices showed the device moving out on the water, stopping in the Sea of Abacos, and then returning to shore. That is CBS News. A United States official. On record. Per NBC News, also confirmed by a United States official, the GPS data from Brian's device appears to contradict his account of his whereabouts the night Lynette disappeared. That is a second outlet. A second official confirmation. Independent of the first. Per Fox News Digital, a United States official confirmed the dinghy allegedly visited the same area as that GPS data shows. That is a third outlet. A third official statement. All three saying the same thing from different sourcing chains. Here is what that means in plain language. GPS data does not record impressions. It does not record intentions. It records location, timestamp, movement, stop, return. Every point logged the moment the device was at that position, stored on a server that Brian Hooker could not reach back in time to erase. When investigators pulled that data, they did not find a man drifting helplessly at the mercy of wind and current. They found a device that went somewhere specific, stopped, and came back. That is not the movement signature of an accident. That is the movement signature of a destination. And here is the line that connects those two facts into one picture. A near-silent electric dinghy left that anchorage in the dark. Nobody heard it go. The GPS recorded exactly where it went. And the place it stopped is now under 25 feet of water in the Sea of Abacos, at coordinates Brian Hooker never once mentioned to a single investigator, in an area federal divers are entering right now because his own device led them there. He moved through the dark in silence. The technology watched every second of it. Brian Hooker has not been charged with any crime. His attorney Terrell Butler stated on record that Brian categorically and unequivocally denies any wrongdoing. His U.S. attorney Crystal Hauser has asked the public to extend him the same consideration anyone would want in his position. We carry that through every chapter of this episode because it is the truth of the legal record and it matters. What we have just walked through is the documented evidence record. Those are not the same thing and we will not treat them as if they are. The GPS recorded a destination. Federal divers are at that destination right now. Next we go aboard Soulmate, and find out what every system on that boat was recording while Brian says nobody was there. Now let me take you inside Soulmate. Because Brian Hooker did not just live on that boat. He networked it. He wired it. He installed the systems, understood the systems, and by his wife's own documented description was, quote, geeking out on all the electronics. He knew exactly what that boat could record. What he may not have fully understood is how much of it he could never reach back and erase. Let's start here because this is the foundation. Brian had a marine navigation app running on his phone. A marine navigation app does one thing above everything else. It logs where you are. Continuously. Automatically. Every position time-stamped and stored, not just on the device itself but on the app's remote servers. When investigators extracted that data, per CBS News confirmed by a United States official, they found a device that moved out onto the water, stopped at a specific location in the Sea of Abacos, and returned to shore. That data does not live only on the phone. It lives on a server that Brian Hooker has never had access to and cannot modify. Federal investigators accessed it under subpoena. It showed them a destination he never mentioned. Soulmate had a Starlink terminal mounted on the mast, SpaceX's satellite internet system. Here is what most people do not know about Starlink. Every device that connects to it generates a connection log. Timestamp. Device identifier. Duration. That log does not live on the boat. It lives on SpaceX servers in the United States, accessible to federal investigators under a Department of Justice subpoena regardless of what Brian did with any physical device aboard. If any phone, watch, or tablet came within range of Soulmate's Starlink network on the night of April the 4th, or after, that connection exists in a log Brian Hooker cannot touch. Every commercial and recreational vessel above a certain size broadcasts its position continuously via AIS. Soulmate's AIS went offline at 9:29 in the evening on April the 4th. It came back on at 8:34 the following morning. 11 hours of silence on a boat with hundreds of watts of solar power available. Per investigators and public record, AIS systems do not simply switch off by accident. Someone turned it off. Someone turned it back on. Per sources familiar with the investigation said, Soulmate was equipped with a blink camera system. Amazon's home security product adapted for marine use. Blink cameras upload footage automatically to Amazon cloud servers. Not to a hard drive on the boat. Not to a device Brian could format or destroy. to Amazon servers, where it sits under federal subpoena protection. Cameras at the stern, the bow, and below deck, covering every angle of the cockpit and the approach from the water. After a lightning strike damaged Soulmate's original electrical system, a new battery management system was installed. These systems log every electrical event with a precise timestamp. Every light switched on. Every pump activated. Every device charged. Every time a human being is aboard that boat using power, the log records it. If the boat was dark and empty after 7:30 as Brian describes, that log shows it. If it was not, that log shows that too. Now stop. Daniel Danforth, a friend of the Hookers who spoke to Fox News Digital, described a $33,000 FLIR thermal imaging system aboard Soulmate, forward-looking infrared, capable of detecting heat signatures in complete darkness, the kind of technology search and rescue teams use specifically to find people in open water at night. Per CBS News, the FLIR camera can operate with a cloud memory system and is currently being processed as part of the ongoing investigation. Danforth told investigators about the camera in early May, and said it was the first they had heard of the system being on the boat. Lynette Hooker went into the water on the night of April the 4th. There was a $33,000 thermal camera on her own boat that could detect a human heat signature in complete darkness at distance. It can track a body in dark water automatically. It is exactly the technology you would use to find a person who just went overboard at night. Brian Hooker never turned it on. Not that night. Not the next morning. Not once. Every system on that boat was keeping a record. The GPS logged the destination. The Starlink logged the connections. The AIS logged the silence. The cameras uploaded to the cloud. The battery system logged every moment of power use. And the one system that could have found Lynette, the one system that existed on that boat for exactly this kind of emergency, stayed dark. The technology was watching. All of it. And federal investigators are reading every line of what it recorded. This is the part where we do something most true crime coverage does not do. We take the counter-argument seriously. The strongest challenge to this angle is straightforward. GPS data from a phone or a marine navigation app reflects where the device was, not necessarily where the person was, not necessarily what they were doing, and not necessarily what the movement means. A device could be aboard the dinghy while someone drifts. A stop in GPS data could reflect a brief pause in current, a moment of paddling against wind, a technical artifact of how the app samples and logs position. The movement signature investigators describe, out, stop, return, could have an innocent explanation that the public simply does not have access to yet because the investigation is ongoing and the full data has not been released. That is a fair challenge. We name it because it is real. Brian himself wrote on Facebook, "I am heartbroken over the recent boat accident and unpredictable seas and high winds that caused my beloved Lynette to fall from our small dinghy near Elbow Cay in the Bahamas. Despite desperate attempts to reach her, the winds and currents drove us further apart." Those statements are on record. They matter. We carry them. Now here is why the evidence still points where it points, without dismissing the counter. The challenge to GPS interpretation would carry more weight if the GPS data were the only anomaly. It is not. The GPS data sits alongside a drift timeline that does not match the physics, a weather record that contradicts the stated conditions, a flare count that contradicts Brian's own account to Lynette's mother, and 3 different versions of which direction Lynette was swimming. Any one of those contradictions could have an innocent explanation. All of them together in the same account, pointing in the same direction, is a different evidentiary picture. And on the specific question of the electric dinghy and the silence, the counter-argument would need to explain not just the GPS stop, but why no witness account in the public record places an audible engine departure from that anchorage on the night of April the 4th. An electric motor does not resolve the GPS contradiction. It compounds it. It means the vessel that the GPS tracked to that coordinate moved through a populated anchorage in near silence, and came back the same way. Brian Hooker has not been charged with any crime. The investigation is active and ongoing. We do not know what the full GPS dataset shows, and neither does the public. What we know is what United States officials have confirmed on record to 3 separate outlets, and what that data directed federal divers to search. The counter-argument deserves to be heard. The evidence deserves to be followed. We are doing both. There is one witness that this entire investigation has been circling since the beginning. Not a person. A boat. The yacht Azura was anchored in Aunt Pat's Bay on the night of April the 4th, positioned close enough to Soulmate that its occupants would have had a direct sight line across that anchorage all evening. Per CBS News, the Coast Guard Investigative Service issued a formal memo seeking to locate the owners and occupants of a sailboat moored near Soulmate that night. The memo states directly that the owners and occupants of that vessel may have information relevant to the CGIS investigation. Azura has not been located. Its crew has not come forward publicly. And what they may have witnessed that night has not entered the record. Here is the timeline of what was happening on that anchorage while Azura was there. At around 7:30 in the evening, Brian and Lynette departed the Abacos Inn by dinghy. At approximately 8 p.m., witnesses on land reported seeing a flare, not fired upward into the sky the way a genuine distress signal travels, but horizontally, across the surface of the water, in the direction of Soulmate. After 9:30, when ambient noise on the island had quieted, a witness reported hearing a massive splash coming from the direction of Soulmate. Loud enough to register. Loud enough to remember. At 9:29, Soulmate's AIS went offline. At approximately midnight, a resident named Dean, facing Elbow K from Lubber's quarters, had video running. That footage captured light activity consistent with Soulmate's position. Lights moving low near the waterline where a dinghy would be and higher up on deck. Brian says nobody was anywhere near that boat at midnight. If Azura's crew was awake at 8 p.m. at 9:30, and at midnight they may have seen all of it. If you have any information about the vessel Azura or its crew, if you were anchored in Aunt Pat's Bay on the night of April the 4th, please submit what you know through the CGIS Tips application. It is anonymous. It is available on iOS and Android. The link is in the description. Now the prior conduct. We state the disclaimer before we go any further. Brian Hooker has not been charged. Everything in this section is drawn from documented sources and reported accounts. We present it in the order the record built it. Lynette's friend Carly Ellsworth told CNN that during a breakup period in 2024, Lynette disclosed that Brian had choked her and threatened to kill her and throw her overboard so that nobody could find her. Those are the words Lynette used. Throw her overboard. So nobody could find her. Blaine Stevenson, a friend of both Brian and Lynette, relayed that during the same 2023 to 2024 separation period, Lynette told her friend Marnie she could not cruise with Brian anymore and could not be alone on a boat with him. Per NBC News, a 2015 Kentwood, Michigan police report documented a domestic incident between Brian and Lynette in which Lynette told officers Brian had choked and struck her. The case was eventually dropped. Brian was not charged. But it was documented on paper with a case number by law enforcement. The countdown. 3 months before Lynette disappeared, in January of 2026, Lynette told Carly about the overboard threat again. Not as history. As something present enough to name. 3 weeks before she disappeared, Lynette had a plane ticket out. A documented exit. She did not use it. On the night of April the 4th, a $33,000 thermal camera sat aboard Soulmate, the exact technology designed to find a person in dark water. It was never activated. She said he threatened to throw her overboard so nobody could find her. Federal divers are now in the water at the coordinates his own device recorded, looking for exactly that. Nobody heard it leave. We said that at the start of this episode. It was a question then. It is not a question anymore. The dinghy had an electric motor. Confirmed on record by a named friend of the couple to Fox News Digital. Near silent propulsion, capable of navigating precise coordinates in complete darkness, moving through a populated anchorage without giving a single person an acoustic reason to look up. That is not a theory. That is the documented physical reality of the vessel Brian Hooker was aboard on the night of April the 4th. And here is what the record shows that vessel did. The GPS data logged a device moving out onto the water, stopping in the Sea of Abacos and returning to shore. CBS News. United States official. On record. The marine navigation app placed that device at coordinates Brian Hooker never once mentioned to investigators. NBC News. United States official. On record. A U.S. official confirmed the dinghy allegedly visited the same area as the GPS data shows. Fox News Digital. On record. The Royal Bahamas Police Force granted permission for Coast Guard divers to enter that location. CNN. Confirmed. The search area sits under 25 feet of water. Deep enough that every aerial search conducted since April the 4th passed directly over it and saw nothing. Those divers are in that water right now. Soulmate's AIS went offline at 9:29 p.m. and came back at 8:34 the next morning. The FLIR thermal camera, $33,000 cloud-connected, designed to find a human heat signature in dark water, was never activated. The Blink cameras uploaded to Amazon servers. The Starlink terminal logged every connection to SpaceX servers. The battery management system recorded every electrical event. The FBI is processing all of it at Quantico. None of it could be erased. None of it was. Lynette Hooker sewed the bimini on that boat with her own hands. She ran in the mornings before the day had reasons to stop her. She bought healing oil for Brian's nail fungus and probably didn't make a thing of it. She made everyone around her feel like they had hit the lottery just by knowing her. She called the ocean her happy place. It was supposed to be exactly that. The technology that surrounded her life on that boat was watching on the night she disappeared. Kept a perfect record. And a silent dinghy carried that record to a coordinate in 25 feet of water that federal divers are reading right now. Nobody heard it leave. But the GPS recorded exactly where it went. When those divers surface, you need to be here. Subscribe and hit the notification bell. Because the next development in this case is the dive result. And when it breaks, this channel will have it within hours. Brian Hooker has not been charged with any crime. His attorneys maintain his innocence. We state that now, we have stated it throughout, and we will state it again with every development that follows.